A Florida pastor and his son were arrested in 2022 on charges of fraudulently obtaining more than $8 million in federal COVID relief funds and attempting to use some of the money to buy a luxury home near Walt Disney World. Evan Edwards, 64, and his son, Josh, 30, were taken into custody 5 months after an NBC News report raised questions over why they hadn't been charged in the alleged scam, which federal prosecutors first identified in court papers in December 2020. It wasn't immediately clear whether the family had hired an attorney. A source familiar with the investigation said NBC News' previous reporting led law enforcement to prioritize the case. The case dates to April 2020, when Josh Edwards applied for a $6 million Paycheck Protection Program (PPP) loan to cover payroll, rent and utilities for his family's ministry. In the loan application, he claimed that the organization, Aslan International Ministry, had 486 employees and a monthly payroll of $2.7 million, according to a federal forfeiture complaint. Aslan International was ultimately approved for an $8.4 million loan. But when federal investigators showed up at the ministry's office in Orlando, the door was locked and workers at the neighboring businesses told them nobody was ever seen inside, the complaint says. A review of the ministry's website found that the donation links were inactive, and sections of text were apparently lifted from other religious sites, according to the complaint. There were other red flags. The man who was listed on the loan application as the ministry's accountant suffered from dementia and hadn't done any work for the organization since 2017, federal prosecutors said in court papers, citing an interview with the man's son. Federal agents descended on the family's home in New Smyrna Beach about 7 a.m. Wednesday. Evan Edwards was wheeled out of the house in a wheelchair. Agents escorted Josh Edwards out of the home and into a law enforcement vehicle, his hands cuffed behind his back. A 6-count indictment unsealed Wednesday accuses them of making a series of false claims in their PPP loan application, including that Aslan International had 486 employees and average monthly payroll expenses of $2.7 million. Evan and Josh Edwards knew that Aslan's actual number of employees and actual monthly payroll expenses were significantly lower, or entirely non-existent, says the indictment prosecutors filed in the Middle District of Florida. The two men, who are originally from Canada, were hit with a total of 6 charges, including conspiracy to commit bank fraud and visa fraud. They were expected to appear in federal court in Orlando on Wednesday afternoon. "I'm glad they got arrested," said a neighbor, who requested anonymity due to the sensitivity of the case. "It's a long time coming." The Edwards family did missionary work in Turkey for many years before moving to Florida in 2019. They settled in a newly built community about an hour's drive from Orlando. In September 2020, federal agents showed up at the home to execute a search warrant, but no one was there and the place had been cleared out, according to the civil forfeiture complaint. Florida police officers pulled over the family's Mercedes SUV later that evening. They were speeding on I-75 north of Gainesville, according to a police report. Federal agents arrived on the scene and found bags of shredded documents in the vehicle, as well as suitcases full of financial records and their electronic devices stuffed into so-called Faraday bags, which block radio frequencies to keep them from being tracked, according to the civil forfeiture complaint. The family was taken into custody on an unrelated immigration charge, but released the next day when the case was dismissed, according to court records. 6 months later, in April 2021, a federal judge in Florida ordered the forfeiture of the $8.4 million the Edwards family had received after the government claimed that it was the proceeds from bank fraud and money laundering offenses. The Edwards family did not challenge the seizure. They had tried to use a portion of the money to purchase a $3.7 million home in a new Disney World development called Golden Oaks, according to the complaint. But the deal never went through. The authorities seized the $868,000 that was set aside for the down payment on the 4,700-square-foot home, the complaint says. As of today, the pair hasn't been tried or convicted on any of the charges, but they both face up to 30 years in prison if convicted. The mystery over the health of the Florida pastor accused in a COVID relief scam has deepened after a court-ordered psychiatrist prepared a report that suggested he might be faking some of his symptoms. The pastor, Evan Edwards, has been hospitalized since December when he and his son were arrested on charges of fraudulently obtaining $8 million in pandemic loans for a sham ministry. A judge ordered a psychiatrist to examine Edwards, 64, after he refused to participate in his first court appearance and mumbled incoherently in a subsequent one. But the psychiatrist, Dr. Ryan Hall, wasn't able to shed much light on the pastor's health. Next, we have a 48-year-old pastor was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison after he was found guilty of fraudulently obtaining $3.5 million in COVID relief loans and using some of the funds to purchase a Tesla. The convicted pastor, identified as Rudolph Brooks, will additionally serve 2 years of supervised release, the U.S. Attorney's Office, District of Maryland, said in a statement. Authorities said Brooks, who is from Cheltenham, Maryland, occasionally served as a pastor at Kingdom Tabernacle of Restoration Ministries. He is said to have fraudulently obtained the funds from the COVID-19 Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, CARES, Act Payroll Protection Program, PPP, loans. The CARES Act was enacted in March 2020 to provide emergency financial assistance to Americans suffering from the economic consequences of COVID-19, the statement said. The CARES Act authorized forgivable loans to small businesses for employee retention and certain business expenses through the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP. Authorities said the convicted pastor obtained the loans between April 2020 and September 2021, adding that he was involved in a scheme where he fraudulently received PPP loans and subsequently used the funds for his personal enrichment and concealed his misappropriation of the funds by laundering the loan proceeds. As stated in the plea agreement, Brooks used several entities to apply for PPP loans, including Cars Direct by Gavon HWD Bob's Motors, Cars Direct, Kingdom Tabernacle of Restoration Ministries, and Madaro, LLC, the statement said. In each case, Brooks grossly inflated the number of employees and average monthly payroll and submitted fraudulent IRS Forms 940, Employer's Annual Federal Unemployment Tax Return, and other fraudulent IRS forms to support the loan applications. Authorities stated that on May 12, 2020, Brooks fraudulently obtained PPP loan proceeds amounting to $1,556,589. He subsequently deposited those funds into a Cars Direct bank account that named him as the sole signator. Authorities also said he then deposited $1.8 million in PPP loan proceeds into a Kingdom Tabernacle bank account after he fraudulently obtained those funds. He was also the sole signator of that account. On May 13, 2020, Brooks also fraudulently obtained $204,266 in PPP loan proceeds and deposited those funds into a Madaro bank account that similarly named him as the sole signator. Brooks is said to have admitted to using the funds for his personal gain and not for its intended purpose. Authorities said he spent the funds on a residence and a luxury vehicle, as well as on restaurant, retail store and grocery purchases. Authorities also cited instances where he made cash withdrawals and transfers to other accounts under his control. For example, Brooks opened a bank account in the name of Payroll by BJM, into which he transferred $500,000 of the Cars Direct PPP loan proceeds. Brooks also registered Payroll by BJM with the Maryland State Department of Assessments and Taxation, listing himself as a member and sole signator, the statement said. Although the name Payroll by BJM created the appearance that the account was associated with a payroll company, there were no payroll or payroll-related expenses paid from this account. The statement continued, in addition, Brooks initiated numerous transfers of PPP loan funds, totaling approximately $196,000 from the Cars Direct account to his personal bank accounts. Of this amount, Brooks wired $60,407 to Tesla Motors Incorporated on July 30, 2020, to purchase a 2018 Tesla Model 3 in the name of Brooks' son, which was ultimately registered in Maryland in Brooks' own name. On February 5, 2021, Brooks transferred $750,000 in proceeds from the Kingdom Tabernacle PPP loan to a bank account in the name of Madaro, for which Brooks was the sole signator. On May 17, 2021, Brooks initiated a wire transfer of $507,010 to a title company to purchase property in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, in the name of a Rudolph Brooks, authorities added. Besides his conviction, Brooks has also been ordered to forfeit all property and assets he derived from or obtained from his illegal actions. The properties Brooks has been ordered to forfeit include a 2018 Tesla Model 3 property in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, and at least $2,231,141.49 from 17 bank accounts that he controls, authorities said. He was sentenced on August 27 to 18 months in federal prison after he was found guilty of fraudulently obtaining the $3.5 million in COVID relief loans. Another pastor out of Miami was sentenced to 48 months in federal prison for obtaining more than $500,000 in fraudulent PPP loans. Eli Floridin, self-described pastor of New Bethel Baptist Church in Miami, Florida, was tried and convicted of Paycheck Protection Program (PPP) loan fraud after seeking more than $1 million in loans for fraudulent companies. Now he has been sentenced to 48 months in federal prison. Through a mediator, Floridin repeatedly applied for PPP loans for fake companies, often described as employment agencies. According to a press release from the Southern District of Florida Attorney's Office, Floridin caused an intermediary to repeatedly file false and fraudulent PPP applications, which sought federal COVID-19 assistance funds for companies that did not exist. One of the fake companies was described as an employment agency, which Floridin said had dozens of employees and an annual payroll of $960,000. Floridin received a $200,000 PPP loan and then caused a third party to submit 3 additional fraudulent PPP applications based on non-existent companies, totaling another $600,000. The last 3 applications were denied. At trial, Floridin pled guilty to the charges of PPP loan fraud. He admitted to applying for more than $1 million in aid and was sentenced to serve 48 months in federal prison. After Floridin pled guilty, the government learned of yet another fraudulent PPP loan application connected to him that was approved. Floridin received around $336,000 in the form of a PPP loan for a fake company. With the 2 fraudulently obtained loans dispensing $200,000 and around $336,000, respectively, Floridin was ordered to pay back the full $535,996 to the United States government. This amount was in addition to his prison sentence. Thanks for watching, and please hit the like button if you like the video. Also comment, share and subscribe to the channel for more content like this.